Good morning, everybody. I'm going to call this meeting to order. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. My name is Marla Billinghurst, and I'll be chairing the panel this morning. To my left is Mr. Robert Upton, and to my far left is Mr. Maurice Terrien. Did I say that right?
Right on.
All right. The assessor this morning is Mr. Kem Wong, and our recording secretary is Kara Belshaw. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussions to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in, or they can affirm. Please be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decision with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. And as information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record.
Will affirm. Please state your name.
Come on.
Do you affirm the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Please state your name.
Rocky Nickel.
Do you affirm the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
All right, the first matter on the docket this morning is 1745 Henderson Highway. Mr. Assessor, please proceed when you're ready.
Yeah, that works too.
It's one of those mornings.
Yeah. So the subject property is 1745 Henderson Highway. The roll number is 040-021-26600. It's a residential apartment block. That's 12 stories high. It was built in 1974, but we got an effective year built in 1994. It has 110 suites with 125 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is our income valuation summary. We used average rents of $1,200 to get a potential income of $1,250,000 or $585,000. We used a 2.6% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $1,543,000. We used a 42% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $891,000. Kept at 5%, we have an estimated market value of $17,835,000. On page 4 are our rent comparables, showing that the rents we've used are in line with what's on the market. On page 5 is a summary of the income and expenses submitted by the owner. When I was reviewing this property, I realized I'd made an error on the 2017 income. I'd just like to hand out a sheet with the corrected information.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just made an error with regards to, I report for the original income expense summary, I reported their budgeted amounts, which was like their actual amounts. So in the handout for 2017, that's the actual income and expenses. So there's a slight difference in the NOI. But page 5 is a summary of the income and expenses submitted by the owner, which are at the back of the brief. stabilized NOI is approximately $893,000, which is very similar to what the model is estimated at $891,000. On page 6 is information on how we derived our cap rates. The bottom of page 6, near the bottom, is the multifamily section. The assessment and taxation department cap rates range from 4 to 7.3%, with the majority of the cap rates between 4.9 and 5.3%. On page 7 are some cap rate sales. The purpose for showing these individual capitalization rates is to illustrate the accuracy of the model and substantiate the model-derived capitalization rates. On the multifamily section, 332 Ward is probably the most similar to the subject property, with it being a larger building. And that has a 5% cap. And on the bottom, 500 Portage has a 4.07% cap. Page 9 is a picture of the subject property with its location. On page 10 are some pictures of the subject property from the internet at sunrex.ca. Page 11 to 18 are the income statements submitted by the owner. On page 19 is a permit for work that was done in 2011, where they made interior alterations to all 110 units in the building. The declared construction value for that permit is $1,308,000. So the actual performance of the property supports the model, and the cap rate is supported by the market. I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $17,837,000.
Thank you very much. Mr. Newfeld, if you have questions for the
Yes.
assessor.
Yes, I do. The valuation on page 3, was this all in the model?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, sorry, I just had caught something there last minute. You had said that page 7 was, I'm just trying to understand, because it says here on the top of page 7, they are not meant to be comparable specific to the subject property, but then you said that 333 Ward was the most similar, so which is it?
Well, they weren't meant to be specific comparables, but you can, I mean, I think you can look at it as a reasonable comparable.
Well, so you're saying now we can use it as a comparable?
It's an example of a cap rate.
Well, it's one or the other. This is not just maybe we'll fudge it in here. You got direct language at the top. They are not meant to be comparables. Then your direct language was, it is the most comparable. So I think it's a fair question to ask, which is it?
I guess it can be both.
No, it can't be. It can be one or the other. Not is not, maybe, it includes, not is binary, yes or no. But you're saying you want to do both.
I think it can be both.
All right. This 500 portage you had also mentioned at the bottom. Where did the information come here? It says that Altus provided the information?
The operating income.
So was Altus handling the transaction?
I'm not sure.
Well, was this, how did Altus provide this to you?
Oh, this property, it was an appeal, and that was the operating income that was used in the appeal.
In the appeal. So, but it wasn't, was it to your knowledge, the operating income that was used for the transaction?
I'm not sure. The owner authorized the agent to appeal the property, and that was the way it was presented for operating income, so, and applied against the sale price, it was 4.07.
So you didn't speak to the participants in the transaction,
No.
Lanesboro or Timber Creek?
No.
And you'll confirm that this property has a major office portion in it?
Yes, it does have about a 20% office space, but typically the office cap rates are a little bit higher than the apartment, so if it was purely an apartment, the cap rate might be a little bit lower.
And this property had a significant indoor parkade, is that correct?
I'm not sure.
It's all indoor parking,
Okay.
isn't it?
I'll take your word for it.
So getting back to 333 Ward, what was the source of that information? I think the last time we met, you provided us with the source of the information, is that not correct? That it was taken from an appraisal?
No, it wasn't.
That's what you said in writing. I brought it with me.
What was presented there is not how, the cap rate that we have here was calculated by a colleague based off of the income and expense information that we have along against the sale price,
And what sale price was that?
18 million.
Now, the last time we spoke under oath, you said it was 18,800,000.
You're.
Okay. I'm gonna stop you guys here for a minute because we don't know what evidence you're referring to that was introduced in a different hearing that we weren't
Well, it's
part of,
directly
so.
contrary to what's being said today, so I think I have the right to at least test this and
Well, you should-
understand why things were said differently at a previous hearing, and they're different today. Do I not have that right?
Well, are you referring to written evidence that,
Yes.
okay, so is this rebuttal evidence that you have?
Oh,
that-
you were there.
Do you know how many hearings I've been to recently?
Yeah. I mean, I remember everyone.
You have a better memory than I do.
And I think Maurice says he does, remembers everyone. It was contrary, and so that troubles me, because this is what, at the time, so.
Okay, no, but do you have, if you're gonna introduce as rebuttal, that's fine, do you have copy, if it's an email, do you have copies for us to?
Certainly.
telling you you couldn't. It's just,
No,
it's
it's
a
fine.
process.
It's fine. This is, I don't know why this particular property always seems to come up.
It comes up frequently, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I just asked if it was contrary to what you provided earlier, and I'd given you the written summary of what was presented, as well as my notes that I had written on here at the time, that it was from an appraisal at $18,800,000. That's what you said under oath last time. So you're saying now it's a different story?
We were talking about different things. I think Mr. Neufeld is,
Well,
I don't believe that's,
the question was put to you.
yes.
And I said, my question was, are you now saying that this was from a workup that someone in your department did?
That is exactly what I said the last time around.
Okay. And this particular workup, when was it dated?
Pardon me?
When was it dated?
I am not sure.
It was from a mailer then?
I believe it was from the income and expenses that we have.
Which would have been submitted when? At the time of sale, January 15th, 2016, what mailer were you in possession of?
I'm not sure what mailers were used. I'm assuming it was at the reference, at the sale period.
Which was at the sale period, but you don't send out a mailer at the sale period, do you? You sent it out in April the year before for the prior fiscal year, do you not?
With regards to information that was used to stabilize, to estimate the cap rate, I'm not sure. I can only guess that it was the relevant
Okay.
information.
Okay, so I think he answered
Okay,
best
no,
of his ability.
That's fine, I'm moving on.
We got the point?
So the point is, the assessment department was not there at the time of purchase, nor did you have any information directly relating to the purchase? You weren't part of the transaction?
We were not a part of the transaction, no.
Thank you. You have provided,
So, I'm sorry, with regards to him saying that I was contradicting myself, I'd just like to clarify. The information that we provided in our cap rate study, it was provided like it was a stabilized information, stabilized income and expenses against the sale price. With regards to the information that Mr. Neufeld has presented, it was for 333 Ward. The cap rate used in the appraisal for 333 Ward is 5%. It was based off of 18 sales that indicated a 5% cap rate. And so with regards to that statement and with regards to what the information that we presented, they are different things. But in the end, they actually indicated 5%. And so I was not mixing the two together as Mr. Neufeld has asserted.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
well, to further clarify, I did have a discussion with the assessor supervisor who admitted that they were using this appraisal and without permission. So our company was involved in this transaction and as such are extremely concerned about the misuse of information, and it may not be the appropriate forum for it, but it is the appropriate forum to bring up the point that everything they've done is unreliable. And I do have a copy of that actual appraisal, which I did get asked permission to use, which is a limited condition as to what, he just brought it up verbally, saying that he had 18 cap rate sales from an appraisal, so he just opened the door for this, I believe.
Okay, thank
It's
you.
written on there.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right, and,
Is that
Yeah.
new evidence?
no, I just,
I just a question, Madam Chair.
yeah, no.
Who
Well, I
who
was-
wrote this 18?
I did.
I was gonna ask him that when we got to questioning
I
his.
did.
Okay, we weren't there yet?
I didn't forget about that.
Okay, well, the three of us had the same question.
Yeah, so we,
no,
I'm sorry, ma'am.
I wrote that down as an answer to a question on this appraisal that had been provided and was later confirmed with the assessor supervisor, that that's what appraisal he was in possession of. That is an excerpt from the appraisal, the only one that I feel safe to distribute because it says you can't distribute it without written authorization. Possession does not allow reliance on it. And,
Okay, wait, did you see this? Or
Yes.
are you agreeing to him, because it's new evidence?
Am I agreeing to this?
Yes.
well, it's not new evidence, it's rebuttal. He just verbally said he had 18 sales that he plucked from this report that supported 5%. So it's rebuttal. You can't quote them.
This appraisal, it was presented at a hearing, and it's a matter of public record, and I'm
Public
just
record
speaking
doesn't
towards.
cover copyright. Public record doesn't allow reliance.
Okay. And let me just take a look at this quickly. Please give me a minute to read it. Yeah. Okay.
Don't worry, we'll get this out of the way and move on.
I was gonna say, let's keep in mind how much time we're spending on the issue of Ward, which isn't actually an issue here, and
And then.
in the grand scheme of things,
And then.
and that we've all heard the arguments on both sides of Ward before, so.
I appreciate that, and, I guess my concern here is that as an accredited appraiser, I know they can't use this information at all. Whether you have possession of it or not, doesn't mean you can use it.
And we look at the weight of certain things, so.
I'll move on. And I was moving on, and then he interjected and started talking about this.
Guys, come on, okay, let's.
Okay, let's, more lighthearted items here. On page 5, you'd mentioned, and you provided a new handout, that your recalculation of 2017 income was in fact a bit too high, and you dropped it by about $47,000. Did you adjust your valuation as well?
No,
Okay.
it supports the model.
Let's just ask the question. And I also noted that you made a change on the expenses. I didn't hear that being brought up on the average expenses. Did you change your model, your evaluation as a result of that?
No.
Okay. Did you have an opportunity, since you have the statements of this property, you'd mentioned a renovation in 2011, do you have the statements from 2012 forward?
Only 2015 to 2017.
Okay. And did you have an opportunity to review the expenses on those, particularly in regard to repairs and maintenance? And I notice you've got several of the statements in your report. I'm just wondering if you had reviewed them.
Just for summary.
Well, did you note a trend at all in the expenses?
They seem to be slightly upward.
They continue to rise. Now, is that consistent with post-renovation?
I'm not sure.
Well, you've averaged the expenses, but yet they show in your workup to continue to rise. And I'm just wondering if averaging was appropriate in this case.
Yeah, the summary was meant to give an idea of how the building was performing, and it was meant to summarize the income and expense information into a, I guess, more manageable chart, so that's what it's like.
Now, the decline in income from 2016 to 2017, is that consistent with the market?
Typically, no. In this case, it's $10,000, which is, I would say it's a very small amount considering the amount of the income.
And again, same question, did you look back at the historical trends?
It's just the 3 years.
And did you discover any trend?
It is upward.
Upward, but it declined in 17, did it
Yeah.
not? Okay. Those are my questions, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Terrian, do you have questions of the assessor?
So you recalculated the, well, you haven't recalculated, that's not the right word. Your 5 was to try to support the NOI and on your page 3.
Yeah, and it's just so that you don't have to look through all of the line items
Yeah,
in
well,
the income statement, which
yeah.
is, you know.
Yeah,
significant.
and also I see that, although that's on page 13, the potential rent is 1,753,000. Do you know what level of vacancy there is in that building? Because
It's
that's what
low.
13 seems to be.
The vacancy is low. Like their income is about $1,450,000 and
Yeah, I
it's
know, but I
10.
was looking at the potential and there
Actually,
might be
I
other
believe the
stuff.
potential is $1,453,000.
Well, I wasn't sure if I could
Yeah, I
read
think
that
it's
as
a, I think it's a
four.
4.
You think it's a 4?
It's a 4, yeah.
Okay, if it's a 4, because I'd seen that stuff before and I thought they made 4s like 7s in that same outfit. Okay, that's, so you think it's a 4. Okay, now there's one thing that I also.
Yeah, the vacancy is, sorry, 0.6%.
0.6? Okay, and you're using 2.6. Now, on your recalculated support, as I'll call it, on page 5, obviously the expenses are up to 43.5%, 57%. You're using on page 3, 42.23%. So, I don't know what that means.
Well, the thing is,
But,
the
does
model.
it mean that the expenses seem to be higher than what the model is telling you?
It might be a little bit higher, but the model is an estimate. It's highly unlikely to be, you know,
Yeah.
exact. I guess when you're looking, the summary chart is just to give you an idea that the approximate income is support of.
I know you were sticking to your page 3,
Yeah.
but since it's there as support and as evidence, I wanted to try and understand it a little better.
Yeah, they're not gonna be exact. Yeah.
Okay, did you inspect any of the buildings we're gonna see today?
I don't believe I've inspected
No,
any
you
of them.
haven't inspected this one then?
No.
Okay, so you were going as well, I guess, on the 1994 effective date, based on, I guess, the permit. That's how the city probably reassessed the year from 1974 to 1994.
Correct.
I would
There was
assume that's what happened.
substantial work done.
Yeah, see that. Okay, I think that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Upton.
I don't have any questions right now, thank you.
Neither do I. At this time, I think just to keep everything on track, we're gonna question, maybe we'll ask you
Okay,
questions.
and I had some verbal rebuttal as well, but so where do you want to put that?
So maybe we'll ask you a couple questions I had on your
Okay.
written rebuttal, and then we'll get into your presentation. You can start with your verbal rebuttal. Because I
Sure.
think if we
All right.
get into the verbal first, it's just gonna get too convoluted, so.
Certainly.
Okay, Mr. Wong, do you have questions about the written rebuttal evidence?
No, I think I've said all I need to say.
Okay. Mr. Terrian, did
On
you?
the same question, who wrote that in? I think he mentioned.
I
it.
wrote
Yeah.
that in at the hearing, that that's what the appraisal was for.
Okay,
Well, that's all that means?
That's
The
what
request was for 18.8, is that the idea?
that the appraisal was for 18.8 and the 5% supported at a value of 18.8.
Okay, thank you.
thank you,
Is that
Mr.
good enough
Upton.
for you, Mr. Upton?
No questions on the rebuttal.
Okay, and that was a big question, so,
That was a big one, yeah.
okay.
Yes, on to a bit of verbal, on page, 7 of the assessor's brief. Well, obviously, this can be direct or rebuttal, but our company did sell 333 Ward. You can see I was in possession, not in possession, I had access to an appraisal which I refused to read, other than the limiting conditions, because it's not appropriate for me to read it. We did handle the transaction, and it was based on the income at time of sale, 5.5%. Second, 500 Portage, our company also handled that transaction. At time of sale, the income capped at 5.97%. Just plucking that from memory. So the rebuttal is, these mailers are interesting, but they are not what market is based on. They're a recreation based on a misleading assumption, which is that a mailer for a period of anywhere from a year to 2 years prior cannot be used to provide a cap rate at the time of sale. It's not the correct procedure, because reasonably, nobody's that stupid to buy an apartment at 4%. They will do it at 6%.
Okay, I think we get the point.
Okay, on this particular property, there's a number of complications on it. I'll start with the first one, page 2.
Is that your presentation or is that rebuttal?
That was rebuttal, now I'm moving to presentation.
Okay. Want to clarify that?
Yeah.
Madam Chair, thank you.
On,
Okay, so now we're on page 2 of your,
yes, page 2,
Of this?
yes, one of that
Okay.
document. Perhaps one or two of you have heard this before, but at the top of page 2 is the subject property marked with a red dot. Behind it is a is a vacant piece of land. Now, the need for this vacant piece of land has to do with the zoning, in that it's required to get the density requirement, and all of our zoning information is printed and located in the report, I believe it is. Sorry, I'm just looking for the residential density calculations. We have it listed as RMFS, which would indicate you need 1,200 square feet per unit of land, and I believe it's actually RMFM, which is 800 square feet per unit. So basically, in order to develop 110 units, you need 88,000 square feet, and it's not 88,000 square feet, it's 68,104, which is why the land at the back was required in order to meet the density requirements.
Sir, which land are you referring to?
The land directly east, or in the case of the picture to the right.
so is it
The
this?
vacant lot?
That's correct.
This vacant lot?
That's correct.
So I think it's, I just asked, it's
Yeah,
this.
So they were bought and sold together.
Oh, this one here.
This one here.
Mhm.
Okay.
Or is this one?
Thank you.
And they should be assessed together. Now, we had this at hearing on October 29th, and a value was set at $363,000. So we have to subtract that from the value of the subject property because it's a required piece to meet code, not code, sorry, bylaw. Now, you can see in our calculation, we've just subtracted the $363,000 from that. And this is a legal requirement. Physically, they don't need it for parking because they have underground parking that they've been able to meet the parking bylaw. It has to do with density. The income that you see on our page 1 is we put in 16 and 17, and you'll note that revenue decreased and expenses increased, which is a rather surprising feature because there is no room for a decrease because, as the assessor mentioned, and I agree with him, the vacancy rate on the 17 was 0.6%. or $10,000, and yet that's the amount by which the income decreased, which shows you that in 2016 they were likely full, and in the following year they encountered a vacancy, which means that a value as full still requires a vacancy to be attributed to it, basic valuation. The expense increase is very, very logical. The assessor mentioned that there was some renovation in 2011. I don't disagree. What's important on post-renovation projects is that once you've invested some capital into a project, that you will get what we call a repair and maintenance holiday because everything's been fixed up. So you're not going to incur as high an expense amount in the first few years, but then it begins to creep up, and that's exactly what you're seeing in the statements. I have the numbers for the previous 5 years. The current value on expenses per suite is $1,491, which is still below what you would expect. Previous year, $1,218. Previous year, $655. Previous year, $827. Previous year, $560. And that takes us back to renovation. So what we have here is like I said, it's a bit of a holiday from repairs and maintenance that in 2017 finally caught up with them. And a market rate of approximately $1,500 per unit is still a little bit below what you should be seeing in a property like this. But in the final analysis, this is where stabilization should occur when the improvements matured, and that's how you would appraise it. And as I mentioned, the previous year also was impacted by a 0% occupancy, or vacancy, and it should have had something applied to it. And I did not do this workup, but I'm just sitting here reading the statements, and I'm making a correction of my own, based on my own professional opinion, is that we should rely on the 2017 NOI for those specific reasons. So it's 849,578. As far as the cap rate's concerned, I mentioned already that we had appraised ward, and it's not a bad example. It is a walk-up, and it is newer, but it's suburban and fairly close to the unit count. Ward was similarly impacted because when it sold, it was 10 years old. And so the same issues, you build it, you're not going to have your expenses, but you're also, in the case of new construction, you're also dealing with absorption. Now, absorption of units, especially at high rent rates, is a bit like a ratchet action. Well, sorry, no, not ratchet, I'm sorry, it's up and down. You fill up, and then 10-20% of the people move out after the first year because they got in there because you gave them 1 month of free rent. And then the next year you fill back up, and then 12% move out, and so on and so forth. Typically, it's between 5 and 10 years before you fully absorb and get to a stabilized level. And that was the case with 333 Ward. We also have another property, 336 Ward, that we're involved with professionally. And the same thing happened on that site where it was an 8% projection, and that's page 35. It was an 8% projection, but after the first few years of operation, it only came through at 6% because of the same issue. You use free rent to get people to move in, and it lasts a year, and then they move on to the next project. The good renters, well, they don't have a lot of furniture to move, and they don't put down roots, and if someone else gives them a free month of rent, that's a lot of money. So that's what we're dealing with here is that variation. The other high-rise that we had on page 34 was 228 Notre Dame, and that capped at 5.53%. Now that's an older building, historic designation that was renovated and then sold. And it is a downtown location. So I think the three most appropriate examples we have, one was a project and the other two were actual caps, range from 5.53 to 6%. And those are the ones we should be focusing on. So I'm adjusting our cap rate just to the midpoint of these three, which is 5.75%. So 849, 578, at 575 gives us an extended value of 14,775,270, rounded to 14,775,000. From that, we adjust the lot, which is 363,000 from that, giving us a value of 14,412,000. Now, I note that that is below last year's assessment, but two things I would point out is the revenue's decreasing, not increasing substantially. And the second is that we never looked at that rear lot 2 years ago. We weren't aware of the implications in respect to the zoning bylaw and density. So that is my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Wong, questions?
So you didn't prepare this presentation?
Not the original one, I did not. The revisions are all mine.
Okay. I don't have any questions. Actually, sorry, with regards to the additional piece of land. So you're saying that they both own that,
Yeah, it was part of the same ownership group. The ownership, well, they can't be joined because each of them has a separate numbered company, but it's a common ownership.
so they're not owned by the same company?
No, they're not. They're controlled by the same individuals. Each is a numbered company that are controlled by the same shareholders and directors. But it's required to comply with RMFN.
I guess aside from like verbal information that you're providing, do you have any, I guess, support or do you have any documentation for that?
Math, it's real easy. 800 square feet, RMFN, 800 square feet per unit.
Okay. I'm just saying, like, you're linking the two parcels together verbally. Do you have any, I guess, documentation for that?
Well, I'm well aware that they're owned by the same party and they haven't been developed. Let me just check one thing here. Interviews with the ownership.
So you don't have any documentation?
No, not with me. And there really wouldn't be any documentation. If one looks at the photo on page 2, you can see that this lot to the rear has no access. That's a back lane. So the only way you can get to it is through an adjoining property. And the only adjoining properties that could attach to it are the apartment to the east and the Norvilla to the north. Norvilla does not own it or have anything to do with it, as they're clients of mine as well. The known issues are that you have a lot that's surrounded by single-family properties right now. So under the RMFM zoning, you're also going to have to deal with setbacks from single-family and changes, and neighborhoods have the right to oppose it. That's well known. That's in the public domain. And again, then there's the math that between the two of them, we have 36,280 feet on this lot, and 68,104 on the front lot, for a total of 104,384. That allows you 130 units. Oh, on its own, the front is only allowed 85 units, and it has 110.
Sometime, do you think these two properties should be merged together?
No, they can't, because they have different corporate names to them.
Oh, okay,
That was the problem.
okay. Yeah, just trying to understand what the how the calculation.
Well, it took me 2 years too, so.
And unfortunately, it still doesn't quite
I
make
was a
sense.
bit slow to mark. Well, I understand it perfectly well, because we do so many appraisals dealing with the development density. And it's getting harder and harder to change your development density to anything but a less dense project. It's virtually impossible to get a higher density, and the only time I've ever seen it being done was in St. Boniface on Taché, where the city owned land, sold it, and approved a higher density as part of the development package. And remember, St. Boniface also has an overlay zone as well, so they had the process was in place for higher density. It does not exist outside of that. Now, in the downtown area, the density is not restricted, so you can go higher, go more dense. And outside of the overlay zone, St. B has one, and transit-oriented development is not an overlay zone, but it's more of a guideline. So transit-oriented development will be land alongside the rapid transit. They're supposed to be easier to get higher density. Hasn't occurred yet, but it's supposed to be.
So I guess for these two parcels, you're saying that we should subtract one from the other, based off of you knowing that they're the same ownership?
Well, as I said, I presented this October 29th. There was a ruling. It was same evidence presented to the assessment department. And I believe it was to your department as well. You do vacant land in your department as well as multifamily?
Yes.
Okay, so it went to the same principles, and they were not aware of it. We were not aware of it until just this year.
Once again, you're saying that we should subtract the value based
Yes,
off
I
of
am.
you saying that it is the same ownership?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
And the density speaks to it.
that's all my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Terry.
Have you inspected this property?
No.
You haven't?
Well, I was at a party there many, many years ago.
But you have not
I
inspected it?
don't remember it very well.
Okay, that's all.
They towed my car away. Apparently it was a very good party.
You mentioned indoor parking, 45 stalls.
I think
That's what you said in your evidence.
I didn't say 45, I said there
Well-
is indoor parking.
Well, I thought you said 45, and I wrote it down.
I don't think I said that, but let me just see what they reported. I know it has a mix of indoor and outdoor.
Yeah, because the city's got 125 outside parking only.
Does not look like 125 stalls to me when I look at the picture, that's for sure. I'm looking at the picture outside and I'd say at very most there might be
Yeah, okay, well, let's
80.
try and sort out this one, because
Well, see, the statements have always said garage income. Okay, I don't have a stall.
No, okay. Now, because I thought you would, not sure I got that right, but with that, with the indoor and the outdoor, maybe the need to deal with density had sort of been taken care of, or more or less, without using that back lot. That was my impression of your evidence.
No.
Am I correct?
No, that's not correct. It's one of the issues with density. So current code is 1.4 stalls per unit. So you would need 154 stalls. Now, because it was built and there's 125, that's permissible, that can't change, doesn't change. The second one is the RMFM bylaw of density, which is the number of units. Now, the number of units is based on 800 square feet per unit for RMFM. So RMFS is 1,200 square feet, and RMFL is 400 square feet, and then there's RMU, which is 800 feet. So what you do is very simple. We're RMFM, and you take 68,104 divided by 800, and you get 85 units. That's what the permissible density is.
I guess it was my last, well, there's one more question I have for sure.
Well, anyway, the point is with the common ownership, even if it was grandfathered in the past, if one then turned around and said, I would like to develop the back, you can't. So it's just part and parcel of it, because they have no.
But there's two, you mentioned there were two different companies.
They're
The
controlled by.
ownership by two different
They're
companies.
controlled by the same individuals.
I heard that too.
But so the point is that because the back lot's impacted by the front lot, the back lot is effectively blocked from any further development. Physically, because there's no access; legally, because the zoning is restricted, because it's already gobbled up by the front.
Okay, I heard you on that evidence before. You mentioned about the expenses going up, and the last one is $14.91 and per suite,
Right.
which was quite a bit higher than the previous year, I think. The previous was in the around 1,000?
1218.
1218. Now, the difficulty I always have, when the expenses go up, the NOI goes down, and people still maintain the same cap rate, and that gymnastic, it always troubles me, because if the expenses go up, the NOI goes down, and you still argue the cap rate, is that okay?
No, the concept of cap rate is based on anticipation, which means if you project that things are gonna get better, you have a lower cap rate, because you're anticipating more income down the road. So if your NOI is dropping, you're going to anticipate worse income in the future, so you have to apply a higher cap rate. It's all about a balance act, and put yourself in the shoes of a guy who's buying this property, or lady, I'm sorry, who is buying this property and is looking at this and saying, your income has gone down every year since you renovated. Do you think I'm gonna give you a low cap? What's next year gonna hold? And he's not, he's gonna give you a higher cap because he's anticipating continuing decline. Continuing decline is essentially a byproduct of two things. One I mentioned is that the expenses have begun to rise or have continually risen post-renovation. And second, your rent's $1,200 a month. The market's dried up. We're done. Everybody and their dog is renovating their sites and thinking they can get $1,100, $1,200 a month. Well, that market just doesn't exist anymore.
Okay, and my last question was the last assessment appeal,
Yes, it was.
municipal board?
Oh, no, we didn't appeal the municipal board.
It wasn't?
No.
The municipal board?
No.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Upton.
I think it's covered for me, thank you.
Okay, I have a couple questions for you. You keep referring to RMFM.
Correct.
However, on your brief, it says RMFS under zoning, and on the cities, it makes reference to RMFS, RMFL.
Yes, I noticed that, and I was going from memory because at the hearing on the land, I snuck a peek at my phone, and I thought it said RMFL.
Don't tell me that.
I know.
I don't want to hear that.
Because I got some serious trouble later on. So, I believe it's all RMFM. The city's brief, we're at RMFS. As I said, the density is 1,200, which is an even worse scenario.
Right, because the city's brief says RMFS and RMFL, so I
Yeah.
just wanted to,
I don't know how you could be zoned both, but, you know,
perhaps someone can enlighten me, because I've heard 3 zonings now. What
Yeah,
is this property?
Unfortunately, I would need to go back to the office and verify and to maybe understand why. Yeah.
Why?
Why we have it as RMFS and
S is-
RMFL.
Okay, so I just want to I've heard a lot of letters and numbers here, so can we just I just want to make a note here of what they are. So I'm gonna have a clean page here and write this down. So RMFM, what is it?
okay, the lots
No,
of
no,
different
the
rules,
numbers.
the number.
Yeah, I know it.
M800.
So it's, okay,
So you need 800 square feet of land per unit.
square feet land per unit, okay, and then RMFS,
1,200,
1,200, and RMFL,
400.
400.
Now you can tell that a city employee drew these up because they're totally backwards of what logic would say, right? Shouldn't L be 1,200? No. And then there's another zoning RMU, which is 800.
So it's the same as RMFM.
Yeah, but it permits, I think, some flexibility in uses, some commercial, things like that.
Okay, so that was that. And then my other question here, which, you were speaking of course, the lot is owned by a separate numbered company, but you don't have I'm guessing you don't have the certificate of title or anything, or any of the incorporation documents showing who the owners of company. Did you bring the articles of incorporation of both numbered companies showing us that it's the same controlling parties? Sorry, I'm a lawyer. Okay.
Yes, I did not, however, what I do have is and this is a bit of a dated application. I have the signature of the authorization indicating that the same person was vice president of both corporations. That's all I have.
Oh, okay.
And I'm very familiar with them. They're basically three key players in them, in this organization. And they put a numbered company on each of their properties to legally isolate it, because one of them has a son who's a lawyer working in another firm.
Got it. All right, so I think we are done with this one. Does anyone need a quick break?
Well, we should take care of it.
Okay.
Well, actually, sorry.
Sorry.
I guess before we go on, I'd just like to provide some rebuttal with regards
Oh,
to
I'm
some
sorry.
cap rates.
Oh. Oh.
Sorry about that.
We got a lot going on.
I've seen that.
Yep.
Thank you.
So pretty much it's all summarized on the first page.
Okay, thank you.
There are a couple of cap rates that were in the applicant's information, and say for 228 Notre Dame, he indicated a cap rate of 5.53%, and in reviewing the property, it indicates 4.16. So the rest of the document, the rest of the package is just the information in support of it.
Okay.
So the first page looks familiar because that's what Mr. Neufeld presented.
Yes.
Or, actually, no, not the first page,
I knew what you
page
meant.
page seven, yeah.
I knew what you meant. Okay. Mr. Neufeld, questions?
Going right down the path we were discussing earlier here, let's go back to our contradictions. Page 7. I asked you earlier where the cap rate came
How
from.
about this, do you have any new questions?
No, this is, you just hand out new evidence, and I'm just trying to understand. You said earlier that it came from expense mailers that were stabilized. Are you saying now on page 7 it came from an appraisal?
No,
What does it say here?
I'm not, they're different things.
Well,
Like,
no.
with regards
Well,
to.
This is your information, your data. It says the cap rate was 5%. The cap rate used in the appraisal for 333 Ward is 5% based on 18 sales.
Yes,
You said 5%. This is rebuttal. Does it come from the appraisal?
I don't know how, the cap rate used in the appraisal for 333 Ward is 5% based on 18 sales. I don't understand.
Well, is that where page 1 cap rate came from, the appraisal?
The page 1 is a summary of everything that's on the rest of the document.
Did your cap rate in your study, as well as page, which comes from your study on page 7 of your evidence,
Yeah.
did it come from an appraisal?
It did not.
Why does it say that on page 7 that it came from an appraisal?
Do you understand that I'm talking about different things?
Obviously not.
Like the cap rate for the appraisal was 5%. With regards to the 5% that the department has estimated, it was based off of the income and expense information applied against the $18 million sale.
Okay, and how much was the appraisal for?
18.8.
18.8. So this particular appraisal, if you had corrected the price to the actual sale price, what would the indicated cap rate be?
The statement that.
In this appraisal, which you don't have permission to quote.
you know, you can go into there, the statement that I've made is that the cap rate used was 5%. And if you have something to ask with regards to that, if you want to contradict that, then you can feel free to do so.
This appraisal, which you brought in, and quoting in your evidence, page 7.
I did not bring in the appraisal.
Was this excerpt from it, this relating of parts of it, whether verbal, electronic, or written, or otherwise, came from an appraisal, correct?
It's exactly what the statement says.
And did this appraisal actually say a value of $18,800,000?
Yes.
And I asked you if you had, for the sake of information only, recalculated this rate from this appraisal based on the actual sale price.
I did not.
It would be higher, would it not?
Likely, yes.
And
Doesn't mean that you can ignore you can ignore everything else.
now, getting back to your use of it, do you have written authorization that you can rely on an appraisal in any manner?
This information was presented at
Do you
previous
have
hearing.
written authorization that you can rely on the appraisal in any manner? Do you?
Okay,
Not gonna, I don't
You do
understand.
have to answer it. Do you have written authorization? I can question the validity of evidence that you brought forward. You brought
You
forward.
can
there's
question
a-
the validity
Oh, you
of the
brought
statement.
forward-
You
you
can
brought forward
question
an
the
appraisal.
validity of the
okay,
statement that
okay,
I've made.
gentlemen, I don't wanna sit here while you two fight about this. I understand where you're going with this and the questions. Done this.
No, I appreciate you would understand it. And
I,
there are many more people who will need to get to the bottom of this particular issue. And this is an opportunity to do that. However, as it fits with our hearing today, it goes to the credibility and reliability of the assessment department's information. I know your point.
so I just feel in the,
This could have been resolved if I just had an answer. Do you have written authorization? That's all, that's what I want to know.
I don't believe I need authorization to make this statement.
Does that mean no? You don't have written authorization?
yeah. I think that's the answer you're gonna get, because that's the same answer you've received each time you've answered this question. You've asked this question, and we can sit here all day, and I don't believe you're gonna get a different answer in the interest of time.
Now, okay, just for the record then, and I believe I've made this point myself, but you can confirm that none of these mailers match up with the date of sale?
The information is on page 3 and page 5. You can see exactly how it was calculated.
That's not my question. On page 3, it sold towards the end of 2017. Your mailer is dated when?
The 2013 and 2015 mailer was used.
2015?
2016 information was not available.
So the period, 12 months ending December 2017 is what you provided on page 9, the most current for 228 Notre Dame. So that's the end of 2015, so it sold 2 years later, and you're relying on 2-year-old data. Is that correct?
This is the information that was available.
That's not no question. Are you relying on 2-year-old data?
I understand it was the information that was available, but he's asking you about the dates.
In this case, I am relying on information from 2015.
Which is 2 years away from the sale, correct?
Yes.
Same question on 1830 Portage. Your mailer was 12 months ending December 31st, 2015 for a reported sale in 2016.
Q1. That was the best information available, is all of 2015, and that's what was used.
Did you speak to any of these people, vendors, purchasers, agents?
I did not.
So you're assuming that the information they provided you was the same that was relied on in the sale?
Not at all. Or are you trying to put words in my mouth?
Well, what else could I say? How else could
Okay.
you phrase it? You weren't there, right? So does that mean, that
Okay,
means it's an
I think he
assumption.
answered that he relied on the information that was available to him, okay, so
Thank you.
it's fair,
I'll just briefly address this information
okay?
when it's my turn.
Yes. So- Mike, where are we?
I
Okay.
think we're now here.
Yes, thank you, okay.
I have no
Any
question.
questions, Mr. Upton?
No question.
Okay. Mr. Nico?
I have provided my information based on firsthand relationships. 228 Notre Dame was purchased by my client, and the deal was done by Colliers. We have the data in our files as to what the income was that was relied on for the sale. 1830 Portage was purchased by my client, and prior to that, I worked for the owner. It was based on information on the income that was at the time of sale. 333 Ward, I've never worked on the property, but our brokers handled the transaction, and in our files, we have the information that supports this. All three were done at point of sale, time of sale, not at some time beforehand, not on some conjecture. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are now taking a break. All right, I'm calling the meeting back to order. The next matter on the docket is 215 Edison Avenue. Mr. Wong, please proceed.
The subject property is 215 Edison Avenue. The roll number is 040-003-12000. It's a residential apartment block that's 2 stories high. It was built in 1962, but we have an effective year built with 1982. There are 37 suites with 37 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $968 to get a potential income of $430,000. Use a 2.6% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $419,000. And we use the 42% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $242,000, capped at 5%. We have an estimated market value of $4,842,000. On page 4 are our rent comparables, showing that the rents we've used are in line with what's on the market. On page 5 is a summary of the income and expense information that we have. Just note that there's an error on the top of the page where it says 2016. It should be 2015 on page 5. So using their 2015 and 17 information to estimate their operating income to be $265,000, which is about $23,000 higher than what the model is estimated at $242,000. On page 6 is information on how we derived our cap rates, and on page 7 are some cap rate sales. Page 9 is a picture of the subject property with its location. Page 10 are some pictures of the subject property from the manager's website. See, the suites have been recently renovated.
Let's see.
Page 11 to 15 are the income and expenses submitted by the owner. On page 16 is a permit for the interior alterations that were done on the property. the actual performance of the property supports the model, and the cap rates are supported by market. Capacity maintained the assessed value at $4,842,000.
Thank you very much. Mr. Neufeld?
Page 3, was this all model generated?
I believe so, yes.
And what does your model allow, indicate for repairs and maintenance expenses?
I don't believe that's separated that line item.
Do you have any knowledge yourself on that subject?
I don't know. From my experience, it ranges between about 500 and 1,500.
A rather wide range. Would it be dependent on the amount of rent you're asking for, or?
Well, I think there's a lot that goes into how much how repair and maintenance goes.
Page 2, you have a sale listed here.
Yes,
Is that for just the subject?
I believe it's a multi-role.
Along with 225 Edison, which we're hearing shortly?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And do you have a chance to examine the total project costs on both of them?
Well,
You have it later. I can tell you it's 540,000 is the permit on that one.
Okay.
So, did you not look at the costs and the total project costs on and try to compare these to your assessment?
Like with regards to the sale price and the cost?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you looked at it. But your total assessment of the two is 8.7 million, and total costs are 6.7 million, so I'm wondering if that was a factor at all in your analysis.
Yeah, I believe it was a factor because the 6.7 million, the sale price was in 2011. The reference date is 2018. The market has gone up significantly from 2011 to 2017, and so the 6.7 million 2011 actually is very much in line with the 8.7 that we have for the assessed value currently.
So that's based on your assumption the market has improved.
Yeah, no, there is no question that the market has improved from 2011 to 2018.
Doesn't it have to be called an assumption if you don't bring evidence?
I guess it would be, based off of my observations, the market has increased significantly from 2011 to 2018.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Terry?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Upton?
None at this point, I don't think. No, thank you.
Nor do I. Okay, Mr. Neufeld?
This property has a joint property at 225 Edison. They're purchased at the same time. I did tell you that the total investment was 6.7 million, and not coincidentally, that's the same total number we're looking for on both. Bear that in mind when you move on to the next property. So what we've done here is we have the same problem as the last one, which was a recently renovated building, and on that subject, I think all 7 properties are the same ownership here, and they are in the build and buy and renovate business. And the same issue in the repairs and maintenance, and on page 1, we've actually had it broken out how what this was over the years, and that the renovation was providing, again, that holiday break from expenses, which in a property like this should be at least $1,000. Our brokers actually stabilize at $1,200 a unit on properties like this, and we used $1,000. But the point is that as it moves a few years away from the renovation date, then the repair and maintenance costs increase, and that's just a fact of dealing with properties like this. And the renovation date being 2012, and you can see the first year after it, 2013, repair and maintenance 347 a unit. By 2017, they had risen to 889 a unit. Now, our people penciled in 1,000. I myself would have probably used 1,200, but I'm not making any changes to this one just because that's so annoying to do that. I know I was annoying last time. So we have an NOI which we've estimated at 239,000, not much different from what the assessor has, and it's not an issue. The only reason I'm bringing it up is because we're going to continue to have rising expense costs as you move further away from the renovation date, and some will be covered by the rent increases and some will not. Now, in this particular case, the 5-year RTB is over, so, and it is rent controlled. It's underneath the threshold. So the most you're going to get from the future, from a 2012 renovation is going to be as governed by residential tenancies branch. I think the last increase granted was maybe 1.5% or 2%, I forget. But that's not going to keep up with the growing expenses, and that's why we're looking at a higher cap rate. Normally in a property like this, where it's got some smooth, stable operation, you can see that in our cap rate analysis, which is on page 26, that on a low rise like this, the range would be 5.5 to 6.5. That's the Collier's range. We're looking at 6.5 at the higher end for the reason that anticipation, we foresee greater costs in the future, and any investor would consider the same. We have a really, really good example, page 38, 26 and 45 Hargrave. You look at it's a slightly older sale, but age of construction is 59, 34 units and 2 buildings renovated in 2011, 12, sold 6.62%. The company did the transaction, and I have the financials. We know that this was the meeting point, 6.62%. That's a really, really strong example of what to expect on a post-renovation project. And I may repeat this later, but I'll say it now while it's fresh in my memory. On page 27, this is the concept of mortgage equity, which is horribly misused and horribly misunderstood. The bottom line is that capitalization rates aren't there for us to use. They were designed for investors and financing people to use. The idea is that you have to make enough money from your project to pay the loan. It's as simple as that. And if you don't make enough money, then your projected NOI is too low and your project is not feasible. The break-even point on a 70% loan ratio and 4.5% interest is 5.4%. That's a zero return on equity, zero. But that pays your loan back. And that's the bottom line that a bank uses. So anytime someone brings you a cap rate that's below that break-even, and you can rework the mortgage equity, perhaps you have favorable financing, creative financing, that's fine. Creative financing doesn't meet the definition of market value. It has to be standard. If you go below 5.4%, stop using the income approach. It's no longer an income-producing property. You're buying it on appreciation. Toronto, Lower Mainland of Vancouver, they keep talking about they have low cap rates. They don't have low cap rates because the cap rate model income approach should no longer be used. They should be doing the valuation on a cost per unit, a direct comparison approach, not income, because you've lost your highest and best use at that point in time. Not your highest and best use, you've lost the reliability on an income-based model because it's no longer done on income if you're buying something for appreciation. And that's really what's wrong with the assessment department workups, is that they've missed the boat here on understanding what a cap rate is. It first and foremost must conform to the money markets, and 5.4 is the break even. 0 return on equity. So an investor in this case would say, well, I'm gonna pay back my loan, I need 5.4 points on the NOI for that, and then I need the rest for my, for two things. I need it to return my equity investment, and I also need to make sure I have a safeguard in case the repair and maintenance costs continue to rise, which they're bound to, and that's why we're at 6.5%. That value is $3,688,000. That's my presentation, thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wong, do you have a question?
It's just, so your contention is that the market hasn't changed at all from 2011 to 2018?
In 11, which market do you mean?
Apartment buildings?
Like for the value of apartment buildings?
Yes.
The major spike began around 2003 and tailed off by about 2015-16, and since then it's been in moderate decline. So between your specified dates, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but I wouldn't give it a lot of difference. And you're using also the date of 2011. That's the date the permit was taken out, October 2011. So
No, the sale was 2011.
right.
Okay.
The investment was made then, but it didn't open for business until a year later. So just an issue to deal with. And no, I'm thinking there was some movement, but we studied back our returns on it, our calculations on it, and I think you would see that our reported rates likely dropped a quarter point, then increased a quarter point, and nothing to pick
Okay,
from there.
my point is, like, you're trying to say the values are the same, but, so you're contending that the market hasn't changed in from 2011 to 2018. Okay, that would be all my questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Terrian?
Just a question on cap rates. So you're page 26. Do we know what date that is? I was trying to.
Oh,
read.
yeah, that comes from quarter one, 2018. Sorry, I should, what it was is, on page 22, what the advertising flyer said, and you'll note there that the low rise was between 5 and 6, and on page 26, we adjusted that to 5.5 and 6.5 to account for
Yeah,
the difference in methodology.
That's what I was looking at.
Yeah.
I saw page 22 at between 5 and 6. Then I saw page 26 at 5.5 and 6.5. And then I was trying to read where the dates were.
Yeah, well, that they relate to each other, and the explanation, of course, we put on page 25, and you've heard it from me 100
Well, I
times.
read that too.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a revised figure?
Well, it's to show, like, the Collier's cap rate that's reported on the internet is the broker's cap rate, and it includes the cost to close, which is
Okay.
be land transfer, commissions, legal fees, things like that. And they put it in there to show the cap rate to the purchaser, their total cost. But appraisal valuation does not take those into account, so it's just a difference in methodology. They inflate their sale price, it shows a lower cap, we use real sale price, and the cap then is slightly higher.
Okay, thank you, that's all I had.
Mr. Upton?
No, it really comes down to cap rate on this
Yeah,
property.
yes, that's
and,
correct.
We look at the NOIs being similar, and my questions were the same, pages 21 and 22, so I'm
Yeah,
covered,
well,
thank you.
21 is the previous year,
Yeah,
and 22 is,
2018.
yeah, and I think you heard the assessor ask me if things got better, and, well, from 16 and 18, they obviously got worse.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have no questions. Okay, thank you very much. move on to the next property, which is four, oh,
Do you want to go to the 225 Edison, and just a suggestion while it's fresh in everyone's memory or not? I mean,
I don't know if I can
You can.
move.
You can.
Oh, I can? Oh, okay, I thought I had to vote.
Nope.
Oh, okay, so is that,
Sure.
is that okay with you also? Okay, so then let's do that since they are, I guess, kind of a package. Okay, so the next one will be 225 Edison Avenue.
The subject property is 225 Edison Avenue. The roll number is 040-003-16000. It's a residential apartment block that's 2 stories high. It was built in 1961 and it has an effective year built in 1981. It has 31 units with 31 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is our income valuation summary. We used average rents of $944 to get a potential income of $351,000. We used a 2.6% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $342,000. We used a 42% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $197,000. Capped at 5%, we have an estimated market value of $3,953,000. On page 4 are rent comparables, showing that the rents we use are in line with what's on the market. On page 5 is the same error where 2016 should read 2015. Their estimated NOI is $217,000, which is about $20,000 higher than what the model is estimated at $197,000. Page 5 and 6 is cap rate information. Page 9 is a picture of the subject property with its location. On page 10 are some pictures which are from the property manager, same as the previous property. Followed by the income statements, and on the last page is the permit that was taken out for the interior alterations that were done. So it's the same as the previous property, the actual performance supports the model. The cap rates are supported by market, and I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $3,953,000.
Thank you very much. Mr. Neufeld, do you have questions for Mr. Wong?
Yes, same as before, is that model, all model
I believe so,
evaluation?
yes.
No overrides here?
I can't say for sure. I don't believe there are any.
I just had a question on the parking count. Was this taken from the mailer?
It can be from, I guess, a few sources, from an inspection or from the mailer. I'm not sure what it was based on.
Well, on your page 13, it says 31 stalls. I'm just wondering if you had a chance to compare that to the photo on page 9.
I did not compare it, no.
I think that maybe they were counting all the stalls for 215 and 225 at the same time.
I'm not sure.
Those are my questions, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Terrian?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Upton?
No, none for me, thanks.
I have none either, so Mr. Neufeld, please go ahead with your presentation.
Exactly the same as the other property.
Okay.
The expenses after renovation were significantly lower, and they should be adjusted upwards in a normal valuation. As a result, I think our NOI compares favorably with the assessor. You notice in the last one it was $2,000-3,000 lower, and this one it's $2,000-3,000 higher. You know, between both of them, we got the number the same. And it's the same issue on the capitalization rate, so I won't bother repeating that argument. On the parking side though, I just noticed this 31 stalls, and I was looking at the picture. I think mine's a bit clearer on my page 2, and I think, when I look at this, I'm counting, under 20 stalls for this, and I'm, on the other one, it's about 10, 12, maybe 24 stalls, so I think that might be an error. Other than that, it's exactly the same issue as the previous one, so it saves me a lot of babbling on and on and on. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wong, questions for Mr. Neufeld?
No questions.
Mr. Terrian?
No questions, thank you.
None for me, thanks.
Okay, none for me either. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, now we will go to 491 Addison.
The subject property is 491 Edison. The roll number is 040-008-11000. It's a residential apartment block that's 2 stories high. It was built in 1961, and it has 11 suites with 11 outdoor parking stalls. On page 2 are some sales for the subject property. The top sale for $1,225,000, that's a post-reference sale, so I asked you to give no weight to it. On August 11, 2018, there's a sale for $650,000. On page 3 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $780 to get a potential income of $102,000. We use a 2.6% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $100,000. We use a 49% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $50,000. At the 5.1%, we have an estimated market value of $997,000. For our rent comparables, showing the rent reviews are in line with what's on the market. Page 5 and 6 are information on how we derive our cap rates and some cap rate sales. On page 8 is a picture of the subject property with its location. Page 9 is some information on the subject property from the property manager. The property has been recently renovated. Page 10 to 16 are the income statements provided by the owner. On page 17 is the permit that was taken out for the interior alterations. The value of $375,000 for the permit. All right, if you look on page 10, on page 10, their income is $8,000. So I guess they might have vacated for renovations, and their expenses are pretty high. But on page 12, their estimated potential is about 100,000, which is very close to the 102,000 that the model is estimated. Like the rents are supported by the actuals and supported by market. The expenses are they're abnormally high, probably due to the renovations. The 49% that the model has used is in line with other similar properties. The 2008 sale was for $650,000. They put in $375,000 in the property, for a total of $1,025,000. So when you look at the rents, and when you look at how much money they put into it, it supports the assessed value, and I asked that you maintain the assessed value at $997,000.
Thank you very much. Mr. Neufeld, do you have questions, please?
Yeah. Sorry, you just said that if you look at the money they put into it, it supports the assessed value. Are you suggesting a cost approach?
I'm suggesting that if they put in $1 million, that they would probably feel it's worth $1 million.
Well, okay, you said they put in $1 million. Where's that from? And I don't mind you discussing post-reference.
Oh, it's
We
from
do.
page 2.
Yes.
Yeah,
Page two.
in the 2008 sale for $650,000.
Was that just for the subject?
Yeah.
I was just reading ahead on 475 Edison. But the numbers are identical. Was this not a multi-role sale?
I don't believe it was a multi-role sale.
At this point, may I ask the assessor?
Sorry,
and the
I
board
don't know.
To look ahead to the next docket, is that fair? Or if you don't know, you don't know. Doesn't
Madam
matter.
Chair, are we looking at post-reference right now?
No,
or
we're not. We're looking
Okay.
at the
Actual, I
the
wanted to make sure the
2008 sale.
discussion
We
was
said
on,
we are not looking
Right.
at the
we're on
sale.
2008?
Exactly, you were looking at 3 sales, one you can't look at, the other 2 you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, is this workup you have here post-renovation, as of the physical condition?
What workup?
Your page 3. Does this represent post-renovation?
I don't believe it does, because we don't have an effective year age variant,
Will you be issuing a supplemental?
potentially.
Well, I just want to know if we're wasting our time, that's all.
I think there are open permits on it, so
Oh, I see. So when the permits get closed,
yes.
so that could be next year?
It could be next week, it could be next year.
Right. Okay. Then you mentioned that the statement you have, what was your statement? I heard this, that when you were talking about page 10, that the NOI was low due to renovations. Is that what you said?
I said the income was potentially low because their potential is 100,000 and they took in 8,000 in income. So
Oh, I see. 8,000 in income, whereas the potential income was
99,000.
99,000. So you're still in a deficit here of NOI, correct? They're declaring 118,000 in expenses, and I know some of them don't belong. But you're still, and there's no renovation cost listed here, so it would still indicate a negative income, does it not?
It would indicate that this particular income is probably not the best information to use for
Right,
evaluation.
okay, that's fair. The previous year, how about the previous year? Page 13.
Yes.
87,000 in income, 116,000 in expenses. Now, I wouldn't disagree with you if you said that automotive shouldn't be in there, but it's still a negative, it's a deficit, running at a deficit.
Doesn't seem super reliable.
Okay, well, that's a fair comment. So would your conclusion be that the property may have been sold on a per door basis rather than based on its income?
I'd purely be speculating.
Okay. Those are my questions, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Terrian?
So the sale of 650,000, are you confirming that it is for that property specifically?
I actually do not have any notes on it.
You don't?
No.
Okay, thank you, that's all I have.
Mr. Upton?
Yes, your cap rate, you're asking for 5.1% in this case,
Yes.
and the building was 1961.
Yes.
And on your cap rate calculations, you have a split for age comes into effect, as well as location and et cetera. But isn't 61, is a 5.1 cap applied to 1961 building?
In this case, it does because, like what we've noticed is some of the smaller buildings are trading at a lower cap rate, and this definitely falls into that category of smaller building. And so if this is the appropriate cap rate that we've for this age and this size of building.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I guess if there was another question, or if I didn't answer the question.
Well, it seems to me, I was at a hearing the other day, and
Yeah.
the city splits their cap rates based on age.
Yeah,
And they run from, one break is from 1960 to 1974.
yeah, yeah. If this
And
was
this
a
is the
19,
low end, this is 1961.
yeah. If it was a 1980 building, say, the cap rate would probably be 4 point something.
Well, you testified for 5% in the other case. The cap rate, you're using a cap rate of 5% on the other buildings. so we
The
just-
other buildings were larger. Like the size plays into the cap rate. Like the smaller, yeah, the smaller buildings are more easily accessible to more potential buyers, and we've seen them have lower cap rates.
Okay, so you're testifying 5.1 is acceptable in your case, it seems to be the right number for you.
Yeah, like I said, if
Okay.
it was 1980, it might be 4 point something.
Okay, that's fine, that's your evidence, that's good, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Newfeld? Please proceed with your presentation.
Well, okay, we had absolutely no income on this site because this is new for us. We're obviously representing the new owner, not the old owner. And however, looking at the statements provided by the old owner, I agree, they're really not worth anything. If we relied on the assessor's NOI, and we would think of a cap rate probably higher, consistent with 6.5, 6, which is at the higher end of our range, based on the need for work, the need for capital investment, which was clearly demonstrated. Like, we can't talk about post-reference amounts, we can talk about post-reference physical work done. So they're telling you in 2018 that it needed a lot of work. So in 2018, knowing that there's a lot of work needed, that would depress the value and indicate a higher cap rate. That's the logic behind it. The reality behind it is we would never appraise this property on an income basis because it wasn't generating income. It would be appraised on a rate per per unit on the basis that it's going to be renovated later, and I'm assuming the assessor's going to supplement it when it comes out. Right now, it's in an unfinished state, so therefore, you have to treat it like a project building, not generating income, but on the potential. The post-reference sale can't be used or discussed. So what I'm going to say is that it's my opinion as an appraiser that a good rate per door is approximately $55,000 per door, which would indicate a value of approximately $605,000 for this as a project building. Or perhaps $612,500 in total. But I'm not talking about the post-reference sale. But that's a good indicator. I just quickly review the evidence here of pre-reference sales, and a project that was turning income, there are actually a number of sales here sold between $85,000 and $90,000 per door, generating income. So a discount would have to be applied to one that's not generating income, that requires the work to generate any income. And the 55,000 is, in my experience, a decent number. Most of the numbers we've seen are between 40 and 80,000 right now for project buildings, depending on particular details of the project building. So we did have an income-based value. I suggest that you have two ways of looking at this. One is putting a significant capitalization rate increase on it to account for the interim condition, knowing that it's only going to be in place for a couple of months, or to look at it on a project basis, which is $55,000 per door, with a value of about $605,000. That's my presentation.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wong, do you have questions for Mr. Neufeld?
I'd just like to, I guess, say regarding the current, like, we're valuing the current condition of the property, and Mr. Neufeld is saying that we should value it as if it were not occupied. The property appears to be renovated, and it appears to be in operating condition. So
Sorry, you just said that the permits are still open, so how do you know? Do you know one way or another?
I can just start to say from the property manager's website that they've advertised a recently renovated 3-story walk-up in East Kildonan. That's what I can look at, but I'm not sure how you can refer to it.
Well, because you're gonna put a supplemental on it. So, what's the point of debating this thing? You're gonna wait for your supplemental, and in the interim, until you actually issue that, we should be looking at it as a project value. It may not even hit 2020. You can have it issued in December, for all we know. But for the physical condition at the time of appeal, which is the question here, not today, the time of appeal was June 24th of this year. The work wasn't finished. Until such time as it's finished, it's a project building.
We're valuing the current condition.
Okay, we understand both of your positions. We understand that the permit is still open, that inspections haven't taken place yet, so we understand. Do you have any further questions, Mr.?
No.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Terrian?
Have you inspected the property?
No.
You haven't? Did you prepare this,
No.
this work?
I did not.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Upton?
So you're changing your approach from what you submitted to the board?
That's correct.
You're not relying anymore on the 740?
No,
767 you asked for?
That's correct. I think that you're putting on my other hat, looking at what we had worked up. It's obvious that the cap rate has to come up, but as an appraiser, I couldn't do it this way. I would have to look at it as a project building in its condition based on what we know about it, until such time as the city issues their supplemental.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And this isn't a strange request. This particular property owner, incidentally, we've had several of his properties that were put back to project status where they were under construction.
The next property is 475 Edison Avenue.
Sorry, I guess, before, I just like to sum up the previous property
Oh,
quickly.
sorry, okay.
Sorry. I guess the four cap rate sales that are non-333 ward, they needed work. They needed work, and work was done afterwards. And even that being the case, the values sold for between 78 and 100,000 per unit. So it's just information regarding, I guess, properties that need work.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Newfeld, would you like to summarize?
Well, I mean, first of all, what the assessor just said is an admission that these aren't cap rate sales, because they all needed work. You don't cap rate a renovation project. There's no universe where that makes sense. But then he went on to mention that there were some sales per unit, and you looked at an 11-unit property. Halbert is reasonably close to Edison, well, at least for me, because I live in the south part of town, so I think they're all close by. 70 a door, that's consistent with what you would see on a project building too. I mentioned earlier, the range we noticed is 40 to 80,000, so 70,000 a door, 770,000, thank you.
All right.
Okay. Okay, now we're moving on to 475 Edison Avenue.
Pretty much the same as the previous property.
Okay,
I'll say ditto for everything. If you say ditto for everything, move on to the next one.
Yeah, it's pretty much exactly the same. I'll go through the,
yeah, we need that,
Yeah.
because that is not ditto.
no, that's why I said it's like everything
Perfect.
except for that.
Perfect.
The subject property is 475 Edison Avenue. The roll number is 040-007-745-00, and they're essentially twin buildings with the same values and same information.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Newfeld.
I'm fine with agreeing that it's a repeat of the last one, and the same questions asked and answered, the assessor is.
Okay, Mr. Terrian, do you have any questions?
Yes. Did you inspect these buildings? This building?
No.
No, same as the other one?
Same, everything's the same.
So, are you asking for 70,000 a door?
Yeah, I listened to the assessor's
Okay,
argument.
because I was trying to
You know, I
clarify
listened
that.
to it, and then, okay, sometimes he says things that I find reasonable. I was told in the beginning, I said in the beginning I was working on some new material there, so it's.
So you're asking,
That's new.
so you're asking for 770?
Yes, that seems reasonable to me.
Yeah, okay. I just want that clarified.
Okay, did you have any further questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Upton.
No, I have no questions, thanks.
Okay, and I have no questions on this one, so then I guess we can move on. Let me put this in the pile in the right place, there we go. Okay, the next one, does anyone need a quick break before we move on?
I actually wouldn't mind a quick break.
Sure, so let's do that then. And I'm going to reconvene this meeting, call the meeting back to order. The next matter on the docket is 771 Leela Avenue.
61 or 70? 71?
771,
Okay,
please.
71.
Mr. Wong, when you are ready.
The subject property is 771 Leela. Leland Avenue. The roll number is 110-511-55900. It's a residential apartment block that's 3 stories high. It was built in 1984 and has 48 suites with 53 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $822 to get a potential income of $473,000. We use a 3% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $459,000, and we use a 50% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $226,000. Kept at 5%, we have an estimated market value of $4,527,000. On page 4 are some rent comparables, and the rents we've used are in line with what's on the market, or a little bit below market. On page 5 is a summary of the income and expenses submitted by the owner. The estimated annual NOI is about $219,000. Which is a little bit lower than what the model is estimated at $226,000. On page 6 and 7, information on how we derive our cap rates and cap rate sales. Page 9 is a picture of the subject property with its location. Page 10 is some information on the subject property, some interior pictures. So it appears that it is renovated. Page 11 to 18 are the income statements provided by the owner. On page 19 is a permit for the interior alterations, declared construction value of $1,440,000.
It's a post-reference improvement.
The permit, like, we're supposed to value on the current condition of the property, and the permit is just gives you an idea of the current condition of the property.
So Madam Chair, I don't know if that's okay or not.
Did the last one too.
Okay, well, I'll go to the weight that we put on it. Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
No, I appreciate that. I hadn't flipped that far yet, so thank you. Okay.
Yeah, the operating income that we've estimated is about $7,000 lower than what they're actually getting in. It is a little bit lower, but I feel it is fairly close. And there is the 607 Leela, just literally a block away. It sold for $110 a square foot, and we have the subject property at $107 a square foot. So the value that we have right now is supported by the market, and as they maintain the assessed value at $4,528,000.
Thank you very much. Mr. Neufeld, do you have questions?
Yes. What were you saying about a sale of Leela?
607 Leela.
Where's that?
It's not in my brief.
Okay, well then,
Well,
no,
Okay.
Okay.
we're not,
I was looking for it too.
yeah, that was gonna be my question, I'm like, where is that?
Where is it?
The permit dated June of 2019, is that open or closed?
I believe it is open.
And will a supplement?
You know what, I'm just gonna say, I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, so do you know if a supplemental is going to be issued on this?
I do not know.
Okay. On page, well, I can pick any one of these statements. Let's, page 16 and 17, the bottom two entries on page 16, top two on page 17. Turnover, do you see that?
Okay?
And then further down, you have fridge, dishwasher, washer and dryer repairs and replacement. You
Sure.
see those entries? So they'd all be indicative of a normal operation of a property, that this is required.
The repairs, yeah?
So if a property were newly renovated, would not there be consideration that these are costs to come that aren't apparent in the first couple of years after renovation?
Potentially.
Page 3 then is all model.
I believe so.
Those are my questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Terrian.
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Upton?
Yeah, I see you've allowed 3% vacancy in this. Is that different because there are 2-bedroom units involved here? Like your model kicks up 3% rather than,
I believe it's just location.
okay, and that, the actual vacancy was very low?
Yeah. It's like our page 3 is model,
Yeah.
and the,
Right.
yeah,
Okay. The actual vacancy was quite low.
yeah,
Okay, and 5% again on this one, the 1984 building?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have no questions, so Mr. Neufeld?
Thank you. We looked at 2 prior years of statements, and in this case, a little bit more consistency than what you've heard prior today. You can see that the years, the income gradually increased. We stabilized at the higher rate because it was always showing an increase, unlike some of the other properties that were up and down. The expenses are relatively consistent, so we just averaged them out, and that got us stabilized income of 220,006. And that's, this is the normal method. So earlier in the day, you heard about a building that was up and down, and 3 buildings that were coming off renovation and whose expenses were gradually increasing. So it's not the case here if you look at the statements. So the NOI is the proper one at 220, and that compares with the assessor at 226. Not much to choose from there. But I guess I'm just trying to be consistent in my rationalization and theory. The higher cap rate than the assessor's chosen, there's a couple of reasons. One, of course, is 5% doesn't exist. The lowest we should ever be thinking about is 5.5. In this case, the higher is reasonable because obviously there's a need to fix up some stuff, as the permit indicates, so it's expenses on the horizon. Again, capitalization is all based on the concept of anticipation, if you have expenses down the road. I suspect there's not much point in arguing this, as a supplemental is likely going to come out, as with any permit, but as is project, our value is reasonable. That's 73,000 per unit as project building, which we were discussing the range earlier. I said 40 to 80, assessor said 70 to 100. And I'm saying here 73,000 is the number we have on as a unit, would be reasonable until such time as we're assuming a supplemental is coming. That's my presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wong. Do you have questions for Mr. Mayfield?
No questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Terrian.
That's my same question. Have you inspected this
No, I
property?
haven't.
And the next one either?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Upton?
No, none for me, thank you.
And no questions from me either.
A very short summary.
Oh, wait, no. Do you have a summary?
After he does his.
Yeah, the current, like on my page 10, there seems to be a reasonable indication of the current condition.
Okay,
That's okay.
thank you.
The last two properties on Edison were obviously not sold for their income earning potential, therefore you cannot value them on their income. This one was generating income, so you can value its project value on its income stream. Therefore, both approaches to value would have been considered in a typical appraisal, either on the income, capped with the knowledge that work was going to be required in the future, and also on a per door basis, which falls nicely in the range discussed earlier. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next property is
The twin.
761 Leela Avenue.
The subject property is 761 Lila. The roll number is 110-511-56400. It's a residential apartment block that's 3 stories high. It was built in 1986 and it has 48 suites with 53 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents at $828 to get a potential income of $477,000. We use a 3% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $462,000. And we use a 50% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $228,000. Capped at 5%, we have an estimated market value of $4,562,000. On page 4 are our rent comparables, showing the rents we've used are in line with what's on the market. On page 5 is a summary of the income and expenses submitted by the owner. Their estimated NOI is about $244,000, which is a little bit higher than what the model is estimated at $228,000.
I'm sorry, I'm willing to speed this up. We're not going to ask you anything different. This is the sister building as we did before, so I'm not going to ask you questions. I'm assuming it's the same issue repeated.
Yeah, the information is very, very similar, and yeah.
Board's been tortured enough today.
Do you have
I
any,
just ask that you maintain the assessed value at $4,562,000.
okay, your presentation, assistant?
Is the same questions asked as last time? Is it
Okay.
the same presentation as last time? And one closing comment, short.
Okay, Mr. Terrian,
No questions, thank you.
for either party?
None for me.
None for you?
For either
Okay.
party, no.
I'm on closing.
Did you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay.
Do you want to say anything first?
Well, I have one question.
Okay,
Yes.
Okay.
You had an NOI, or pardon me, a cap rate of 6.25 on this one?
Yes.
On the previous one, you wanted 6.75?
No, 2.5. I thought they were.
Oh, I'm sorry, you got it. I apologize, 6.25, yeah.
Um,
That's it for me.
as I said, this is obviously a project building. I think there'll be a supplemental coming, which is the real problem we're facing. As a project building, these two twins, as well as the twins before them, I think we have the right number on them. And until they're finished and a permit is granted, occupancy permit, and the work permit's closed, occupancy permit granted, that's what it should be. But the bigger problem we have is this uncertainty of knowing the supplemental process, and sometimes we have delays of a year, 2 years, sometimes to get this, and a business owner is being unfairly dealt with while waiting for a permit to know what those are, and the whole process is not transparent, and it seems to be at the whim of the assessment department. So had we all been on the same page and we had known the process, perhaps we may not have had an appeal, but we just don't know when the process, when it's going to happen. So in the interim, I would like the board to seriously consider our request on the values, and I can be a bit of a cynic, but I'm going to guess that if you reduce the values, we're going to get our sup a week later. And if you don't, it might be next year. Thank you.
Yeah, we get to the permits when we are able to. It's not a whim thing. With regards to the values, we try to evaluate them as if they were the current condition, and I think the current conditions are indicated as so, and so yeah, I guess that's pretty much it for today.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, we'll close this hearing. Thank you very much.